Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to start with a land acknowledgement by Linda Yamane, who is a native Rumsian Indian Ohlone artist and historian. So, Linda, take it away.
Mishish tuch ime makmash in mishish ai huya shapire Rumsen. Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the ancestral homeland of the indigenous Rumsen people. Ka'in karak Linda Yamane in kue rote chia Violet Smith. My name is Linda Yamane, and unfortunately, my cousin Violet Smith, who had planned to be here with me today, and I was really looking forward to us being together, had to change her plans due to a family emergency. Si ai ruka mur ruk akai in ara utirote atash shapire emech lakun chal kuechal chit chunui yochest in wark. The region around here was their home, the home of our Rumsen ancestors, dotted with villages and seasonal camps where they lived and died, worked and played, danced and sang, laughed and cried. On behalf of the Rumsen Ohlone tribal community, I'd like to say Shududu, which means both thank you and blessings in our language. Shududu for remembering the first people of this land, and Shududu for giving us a voice so we can use it to honor them. I'd also like to take a moment to honor the memory of a sweet and long-time colleague, Gerry Low-Sabado. I guess that was the universe agreeing, okay. For many years, Gerry and I crossed paths frequently as we were both active in keeping the stories of our respective ancestors alive here in the Monterey area. Something I always respected and appreciated about Gerry was her kind and positive spirit. And her enthusiasm had no limits. She had the gift of inspiring change to some long-held and truly offensive traditions here in Pacific Grove, but she always interacted in a way that built friendships and alliances. I know she'll always hold a place of honor here in our Monterey PG communities. Before singing and closing, I'd like to offer a prayer of sorts in our Rumsen language, a message that applies to the intention of this Walk of Remembrance. I address my grandmothers and grandfathers, asking that their voices be strong in our hearts, that they always be present in spirit to guide us, and promising to keep their memory alive. Makpa pakain menakai, makol, hekchon mamlul shakai, huya makrutsusimakai, makol I manokuma kamrote, maksh monshem. Inish kumakun emech, mak pesoe, mak makai. Well, let's see. Starting. I need my other hand, so get rid of this. I'm good. Okay. I'm going to use this. Okay. Ona kue wena, eya ke salala, ona kue wena, eya ke salala, ona kue wena, eya ke salala, ona kue wena, eya ke salala.
Thank you, Linda. So, I'm going to go ahead and get this started. My name is Randy Sabado, and I am the president of the Quok Mui Foundation and the chairperson of the Walk of Remembrance Planning Committee, which plans and organizes all the programs related to the Walk of Remembrance. I would first like to start by recognizing any and all elected officials who are here today. I don't want to miss anyone, so if you're an elected official, if you would please raise your hand so we can at least acknowledge you. And I know mayor's here and a couple of city council members are here, so we will, Mayor Peak will also give us an address, but if there are any other elected officials, thank you for your service, for your attendance, and for your support. Next, I would like to acknowledge all the descendants of the Chinese fishing village. If you could please raise your hand. So we are here today to honor the ancestors of the Chinese fishing village. One of the persons, the person that I'm going to be carrying with me on the walk is my wife, Gerry. The other person that I want to acknowledge, hopefully I can find her in the crowd, is the 7th generation of our family. And that is my granddaughter, Catherine. She is 7 months old, and this is her first walk. Actually, she can't walk, but she will get there. Okay, we also have some special guests today from Lincoln Elementary School in Oakland. We have a busload of Lincoln school children that are here. If you could raise your hands, kids, where are you? So this morning they were treated to the Monterey Bay Aquarium at no charge. They will also have the ability to go back after the walk, and that's due to the Quok Mui Foundation and so yeah, we're hoping that we're going to make this an annual thing for these students. Some of these kids have never been to Monterey. Some of them have never been to the aquarium. Some of them, probably have never seen the ocean either. So this is a way for us to also introduce them to the Chinese culture and the history here in the Monterey area. So thank you. Okay, so May is Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. This month, we recognize and honor the contributions and influence of Asian Americans, Native Americans, and Pacific Islanders to the history, culture, and achievements of the United States. This and all the other events associated with the walk are made possible because of our wonderful sponsors, which include the Monterey Bay Aquarium, the Pacific Grove Museum of Natural History, the City of Pacific Grove, Stanford University, Hopkins Marine Station, the Asian Coalition for Justice, and the Quok Mui Foundation. The foundation is a nonprofit organization whose mission is to uplift the history of Chinese Americans on the Monterey Peninsula. The foundation raises and obtains funds for all the Walk of Remembrance events and programs. If you would like to know more about the foundation and make donations to these programs so that we can continue them, please visit our website at Quok Mui Foundation, that's one word, .org. The Walk of Remembrance was started in 2009 by my late wife, Gerry Low-Sabado, and by former Mayor, Pacific Grove Mayor Carmelita Garcia. The purpose of the walk is to remember and honor the contributions that Chinese and Chinese Americans have made and continue to make to the economic, social, and political development of the Monterey area. This coming May 16th is the 118th anniversary of the burning of the Chinese village at Point Alones. We walk today with pictures of some of these villagers in solemn memory of how they endured and persevered in spite of many social injustices. We also walk to celebrate a beautiful spring day in this diverse community we call home. We also walk, as we walk along the trail, I encourage you to think about how blessed we are, but also to remember those who are not with us today and those who are ill, struggling to survive, or are living under oppressive conditions. Let us leave here today with a renewed spirit to treat one another with kindness, dignity, respect, and to continue those things and to continue to change those things we find intolerable. So, thank you. So now what I'd like to do is to have Mayor Bill Peake come up and say a few words.
Thank you, Randy. And I think this is a good time. Should we give Randy and the committee an applause for all their efforts to making this possible. We've got two council members here today, Councilmember Lori McDonald and Joe Emilio joining me. On behalf of the City of Pacific Grove, welcome. Glad we could arrange such beautiful weather today for you. This is just also, besides the remembrance, this is a wonderful celebration of Chinese and Asian American Pacific Islander heritage. The city I issued a proclamation recently. So thank you for being here today and helping us celebrate the long history of Chinese Americans here on the Monterey Peninsula and in Pacific Grove. It's been almost 200 years, as old as California has become a state. So thank you for that effort to be here today. And I'd be remiss to say, after you've enjoyed the walk and our beautiful coastline, after you've enjoyed the walk and our beautiful coastline, I'd be remiss not to say downtown is just a block up the street here. Visit our wonderful restaurants and shops, and have a very pleasant day and stay in Pacific Grove. Take care.
Thank you, Bill Peake, and council members for coming. We appreciate you and your support. So next I'd like to introduce Nancy Wang, who is going to introduce our guest speaker. Nancy is a descendant of the village and a performer and all-around good person. So Nancy.
Thank you, Ren. All right, so I have the privilege of introducing the speaker for today, and his name is Dr. Russell Jung. He and I are both descendants of the village, and he is also a professor of the Asian Ethnic Studies Department at San Francisco State. So he has authored books and articles on race and religion, and written the book Family Sacrifices: The World Views and Ethics of Chinese Americans. That's cool. Also, Mountain Movers, Student Activism and the Emergence of Asian American Studies. Very important, because I didn't get to have that, and I had to learn on my own who I was and what my history was. So this is great that students today can do that. And as you know, because of the pandemic and all the anti-Asian hate stuff, that many states have mandated Asian American Studies for even elementary and high school, middle school. So that's great. He's also, wrote At Home in Exile, Finding Jesus Among My Ancestors and Refugee Neighbors. That's cool too. So in March 2020, Dr. Jung co-founded Stop Anti-Asian, or AAPI Hate. Yeah, that was a very important, I think at this point, over 13,500 reported incidents of anti-Asian violence and hate. And to be able to put a figure on that is really important in order to get Congress or any government to do something about it. He was awarded the 2021 Webby Award for Social Movement of the Year, and he was named one of the Times 100 Most Influential Persons in 2021, and received the Game Changer Award from the Asia Society in 2022. Lastly, he is now writing a book about our AAPINH community's resistance to anti-Asian hate. And I say, here we are today at the Walk of Remembrance, and the walk is resistance to anti-Asian hate. Remembering and acknowledging our contributions is resistance to anti-Asian hate. So thank you for being here for that. So it is perfect for Russell to be here with us and to talk with us. Please welcome Dr. Russell Jung.
Thanks, Nancy, and thank you all for joining us. I'd like to really thank Randy Sabado and Floyd for the Quok Mui Foundation for organizing this walk. As Nancy said, I created Stop API Hate, and for the last, 4 years now, I've been thinking and meditating a lot on how do we stop hate? How do we repair the wounds, the trauma that we've gone through? How do we make American society more just and equal? And one of the ways I think really is for these apologies from cities like Pacific Grove are a really important step in acknowledging the wrongs and making repair. And so I think this walk is also really important to help us remember that this is our history, and if we don't remember our history, we're going to repeat the history. So institutionalizing this walk is another good step in fighting the hate. But I actually still don't think that's enough. That apologies and plaques are good, that walks of remembrances are good, but we still need more to repair our nation, because our nation really is so broken. So today, as we go for this walk, I want to refocus this walk, and what I want us to remember is the Chinese-American fight for righteousness. The Chinese-American fight for righteousness, and what we have today are 3 students from Oakland Lincoln School, Sarah, Cyrus, and Charlotte. And I think our kids are our moral conscience, right? They're more innocent, they're more clear, so they're going to be the judges of popular opinion for us. As I tell you these stories, you tell me what's right or wrong, okay? What's righteous. So as we go on a walk, as Randy said, we remember a lot of things. We remember the contributions, the resilience, and the fierceness of our ancestors, right? As we go on the walk, we'll sort of meditate on the beauty of where our ancestors landed. We can meditate on maybe the contributions that your own family made, and as we create a community of belonging here, how blessed we are. And those are good things to remember, but again, what I want you to remember today is the Chinese-American fight for righteousness. Righteousness in the Western sense, from the Western Christian idea, righteousness is a moral quality that the individual holds and embodies, right? It's a very individualistic quality. But the Chinese sense of righteousness is different. It does include the virtue that you hold, but not only do you embody being right, but it's more about how you treat other people. Righteousness is how you relate to others, if you carry out your responsibilities, if you treat people properly. So I want you to think about the Chinese fight for righteousness in terms of being right relations with one another. Okay, so what the kids are going to tell me is, what do you think are right relations as I tell you these stories? And today I actually want to talk about the relationship of Stanford University and the Chinese-American community. And you tell me if you think it's right or wrong, and what's the responsibility. So I got 3 quick stories for you. First, Chinese built the railroads in the United States, right? Stanford made a lot of money hiring Chinese workers, but the work was really dangerous. They built the railroad through the mountains, and they had to hang Chinese over on baskets, and the Chinese had to drill the dynamite into the mountains and then get hoisted back up before it explodes. So it's really dangerous. And actually, hundreds of Chinese died at the railroads. They died in snow avalanches. The Chinese, Stanford now paid the Chinese 1/3 less than white people. Is that right? No, thank you. Got that. Chinese were dying. Is that right? No, okay. So the Chinese go on strike. They say that's not fair. And amazingly, in June 1867, 3,000 Chinese all laid down their tools at the exact same time, from Cisco to Truckee. Think about how remarkable that is. What an act of solidarity, what an act of unity, what an act of boldness to go on strike when you know your family's livelihood is dependent on you, to know that you spent your family fortune, but you're going to stop working because it's so unfair. Stanford then, they also demanded safer worker conditions, and they actually demanded not to be whipped while working. Is it right to be whipped? No. Okay, all right. So they go on strike for a week, and then Stanford cuts off their food supplies. Is that right? No. Okay. So sadly, the strike ends after a week. The Chinese do eventually win higher wages. They win some power, but Stanford goes on and gets rich off of this railroad. After the railroad's built, that's when my great-grandmother came. Quok Tai came with her parents and two brothers, and they settled here in Point Alones. And my great-grandmother knew Quok Mui. They were the same age. They played together, and they made their living collecting squid, and, abalone, and all the fishing stuff. Then what happens is, let's see. So that's the first story. Stanford doesn't pay his Chinese workers very much, and then cuts off their food. What happens then is Stanford goes on, builds a university, he becomes governor and then senator. And even though the Chinese built his railroads, he pushed for Chinese exclusion, right? And that's a law saying, no, we don't want any more Chinese, they can't come anymore. Is that good? No. Okay, thank you. They're really helpful. Jury of public opinion. Part of that law, it gets extended in 1892, and then that's when my great-grandfather, Zheng Quanzheng, came, and he settled in Point Alones too. The Gerry Act extends it and made Chinese carry certificates of alien registration. Because they couldn't be citizens, because they were seen as illegal, they had to carry these alien cards all the time. The Chinese thought it was really bad. They thought they were treated like dogs. You know how you have to carry a dog tag? And if you get lost, then the dogs get sent to the dog pound. So the Chinese felt like they were treated like dogs, and they actually engaged in the largest case of civil disobedience at the time. Over 100,000 Chinese refused to obey the law and get registered. I presume the Point Alones community, my great-grandfather, my great-grandmother also engaged in civil disobedience because it was so wrong. It broke a treaty, it was unconstitutional. You could arrest Chinese to be guilty before being innocent. Is that fair, to arrest people if they didn't do anything wrong? So, but Stanford supported that law, and the Chinese resisted. Eventually, the Chinese filed a lawsuit to the Supreme Court, and they lost it. So that's story number 2. Chinese are fighting for what's right, striking for their wages, engaged in civil disobedience to stop these unjust laws, and yet they're still treated unfairly. Okay, the last story is, so my great-grandparents, they meet here at Point Alones, they get married, they have my grandfather, he's born in Point Alones. And here's the last story. So my great-grandmother and my great-grandmother, they both have homes here in Pacific Grove. They've been working here for 4 decades. They are raising a family, and then the town people don't like them because of the smell of squid. Do you kick out people just because of a smell? No. Okay, but that's what they did, and that's what they did all across the West. 168 Chinese villages got dispossessed by mob violence, and then Point Alones became one too. The townspeople didn't want the Chinese, and so a fire burned down all of the village, and then people looted the village and cheered. Stanford then didn't let the Chinese back. He built a fence around, put up armed guards. And the fight for righteousness, Nancy's great-grand-uncle, he actually engaged in nonviolent sit-in. Right? He had a sit-in, and he stayed on the land even though it was illegal. So the Chinese actually filed another lawsuit against Stanford. And think about this. These were poor Chinese fishers fighting the largest landowner in California. It's sort of like you guys suing Elon Musk or something like that. And so that's another example of the Chinese fight for righteousness, is that we still stood up for our rights for a home, our rights to work, our rights for land. Unfortunately, they lost the lawsuit. And so what happened to my family is that my great-grandparents moved to Maccabee Beach, the second Chinatown, and then eventually had to go to San Francisco Chinatown as the only place of refuge from racism. So for 2 generations, my family then fell into poverty, and they were stuck in a ghetto Chinatown, right? So do you think it's fair to lose all your home, all your belongings, all your work, and then have to move to a different place just because you're Chinese? Okay, so these kids are righteous. And now what I'm asking Stanford, and this is what I'm asking the kids, what does it mean to make things right in America? How do we correct these historic wrongs, not only so that we get apologies and we forgive people, not only that we have memorials and we educate people, but that we make real repair? So I'm going to ask you, here are 3 options. What do you think Stanford should do for Chinese people? And I really enjoy this because now we can get Stanford. Floyd, who's the Berkeley Alumni Association president, appreciates this. 3 options. I want you to all vote too. You guys are also the jury. What's righteous? I'm going to give you 3 options, 3 ideas of how to make things right. And I'm actually, once I get your opinion, I'm actually going to send this to Stanford. Number 1. For real, yeah. For number 1, is an apology and a plaque at Stanford good enough? All right, that's number 1. An apology, oh, we're sorry, Chinese people. Plaque, Chinese built the railroads. All right, that's number 1. We should just remember and then forgive. All right. Option number 2. We have the Quok Mui Foundation. They're doing this Walk of Remembrance every year, and we need to remember this place. And so since Stanford is at this place, it's at Marines Hopkins, Stanford should fund the Walk of Remembrance. Stanford should help rebuild the Quok Mui site at Point Locust. Yeah, I'm going to rile you guys up. Stanford should not only have a memorial, but have an educational exhibit all along this walk for us to remember, to educate us, right? So that's the second idea, to make this walk permanent, and then maybe bring more Lincoln kids here. Okay, then my third suggestion is actually Stanford has no Asian American studies, so what we need to do is teach Stanford students. Oh, ironically, I went to Stanford, and I benefited from Stanford, yet, you know. So, what we're asking for is, should Stanford actually fund a teacher to teach people about this story so that students remember and then those students go out and make change? So 3 ideas. Apology, okay, you only get to vote for 1, sorry. Apology is number 1, and then a plaque. 2 is this walk made permanent with memorials. And then 3, a teacher to teach other students about this history. All right, what do you guys say? How many say number 1? Number 1? Okay, how many want number 2? This is like number 3. Okay, what do you guys want? They all say 3. Okay, thank you. I will take that message back to Stanford. So,
number 4, all of the above.
All 3. Okay, you guys are demanding. Good for you. So thank you. As we go through this walk, what I like you to remember, as well as all those other things, is actually I would like you to do is now take a deep breath in and remember the Chinese fight for righteousness. The same breath you took in just now is the air that was breathed by our ancestors. That air hasn't moved. This is the same spirit, the same air that our ancestors breathed at Point Alonis 150 years ago. So think about that. You're on sacred, holy ground of our ancestors. You're breathing the same air as the Rumsen people, as the Chinese people. So let's carry on and recommit ourselves to the fight for righteousness. Thank you.
Thank you, Russell. So, lion dance group, if you guys can get ready, we're going to do a quick lion dance.
We still have photos.
Oh, I just heard that we do have some photos if anybody wants to carry them. We're also going to be distributing a booklet that talks about the Chinese experience here in California. So,
Thank you, sir.
I just heard her name.
I heard them go that way.
They went that way?
That way. I thought they did.
No, I think it's this way. We went the wrong way. You know? Like, not saying specifically in Japan, like, Japanese people have a problem.
Christian Valdez or Joffrey. There it goes. Behind that.
How many kids and grandkids?
Two grandkids and 2 kids. Nearly up forward.
We're just going to do a silent bowing. We're going to line up. And then I'll let Brett know and I'll call it down. Okay.
I don't know.
We are not going to meet compared to here. Right.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
you might get this
Those boats are from too, the rowboat.
One, two, three. Hi.
Okay, so we're gonna close the door now, so nobody can go out or in unless it's an emergency. And again, that's because of the
the sea pups, line pups. So I hope you all enjoyed your walk. Thank you for being quiet. We want to be protective of the sea pups. And here to perform again is the Monterey Bay Lion Dance Team. tried to do that once, and I just about had a heart attack. I think my second heart attack. So my back was killing me. I don't know how these guys do it. You got to be young. So next part of the program. Just a reminder, if you do go outside, there's caution tape out there. Stay away from those areas. Again, it's for the seal pups. We don't want to get in trouble or to bother them. So anyway, the next part of the program is we're going to be giving out 3 awards to 3 individuals who have worked in the Asian community for many years. So I'd like to call up Michael Epson to come and give the first award.
Let me preface this by saying that yesterday, Randy performed a one-person lion dance at the Monterey Bay Charter School in front of 300 students, and they were enthralled. We are recognizing the contributions of Kim Bui to the Chinese community. Kim Bui's life is the epitome of diversity and inclusion. The daughter of a Vietnamese father and American mother, the first such marriage to take place in Vietnam, she and her family experienced instances of discrimination when she was a young girl. She earned a graduate degree in library and information science, taking positions of increasing responsibility in libraries in Monterey County, including supervising librarian for Monterey County Free Libraries, always expanding their outreach to residents of all backgrounds. Her managerial abilities were put to use in a wide range of responsibilities for the city of Monterey. When the Pacific Grove City Council established the city's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Task Force in 2021, Ms. Bui became the inaugural secretary of the task force, playing a leading role in formulating its operational guidelines and chairing subcommittees that helped lay out the DEI task force scope of activities. In 2022, she took on the task of chronicling the discrimination and racist acts against Chinese over the preceding 175 years, including the destruction and removal of the Chinese village at Point Balones. Her exhaustive research compiled persuasive evidence, and her powerful phrasing of a draft apology won unanimous approval by the Pacific Grove City Council. The resolution was read aloud at the 2022 Walk of Remembrance. Ms. Bui continues her efforts to promote awareness of inequities as the chairperson of the second DEI task force. We therefore express deepest appreciation for her efforts to win justice for the Chinese of Pacific Grove. Ms. Bui? This reads, the Quok Mui Foundation 2024 Special Recognition awarded to Kim Bui for her contributions in advancing the history of the Chinese in California.
Thank you so much. I am so honored to receive this award and think of my longtime friendship with Gerry and Randy, and the work that so many of you in this room have done and experienced through your families, through your lives. I can't tell you what it meant to be around 7 generations of Gerry's family today. That is so meaningful and important. And to be here with Sandy, whose book was the great part of the research that was done. The Pacific Grove Public Library holds many of these stories. The Pacific Grove Public Library holds some of the original petitions from the villagers that were referred to by the speaker this afternoon, where they were attempting to get redress and justice to share their ability to live in Pacific Grove. And the history is still with us today. and the fights are still with us today. I do thank the City Council for initiating a diversity, equity, and inclusion task force because it has been so important, and I've worked with many wonderful people throughout that task force up to and including today, as well as the allies and the people who show up to remind our community that this is still important and there is still work to be done for generations to come. So I thank you again for this incredible honor, and I'm actually going to be slipping out in a little bit and missing Sandy's talk, I'm very sad to say, because I'm doing a poetry reading at the Pacific Grove Library later this afternoon, where I intend to read some of the apology, because, again, as the speaker this afternoon said, an apology is a start, but it's not an end. And as we were walking today along the Walk of Remembrance, the last 2 years, the task force in Pacific Grove has asked that a walkway of remembrance be created along the entire Hopkins stretch of the recreation trail to share more of the history of the Chinese people in Pacific Grove. And we hope someday it comes to pass. So again, thank you so much.
Thank you, Kim. Kim has been a supporter of, the, for lack of a better word, I guess, movement to have the city of Pacific Grove recognize the contributions that the Chinese community made. Oftentimes, she's a lone voice, and we're glad to have her on the DEI task force and wish her, good luck and Godspeed in whatever she does. So the next thing we like to do is recognize two other individuals, and to announce that, I'm going to have Floyd Ewan, who's also a member of the Quok Mui Foundation and a longtime Berkeley activist. So Floyd.
Since 1979, that should be open activists. They helped make my wife right there the first Chinese American mayor in America. And me followed by 1 year. So I'm honored and privileged to introduce the next two awardees, both of whom have contributed tremendously to the welfare and benefit of our communities, George Al and Sandy Leiden. The two of them are bookends. You can't really separate them in history because they've helped each other. This book, which is my Bible, I have two copies, one here in Monterey, one here in Oakland, was published by George Al. Capitola Book Company is his company. So it's literally a partnership. And I order all of you to buy this book and read it, please. You can learn all about Quok Mui and everybody else we've been talking about. So George Al, he literally, his background and my background are very similar. George was born in Santa Cruz, Chinatown in 1943. His father happened to be the founder and developer of King's Market. I think George Al Sr. has his own history, and that'll be covered at another time. But George Al Jr. is who we're honoring today. And he was born in Santa Cruz, Chinatown. And in 2012, he and his wife, I don't know if Gail's here today, but were honored by UC Santa Cruz at their founders gathering in 2012 with the Fiat Lux award. Both George's work in the community and also Gail's work in the healthcare community, and also giving scholarships to probably hundreds and hundreds of kids coming through the Santa Cruz area. From 43 to 55, Santa Cruz Chinatown was where he lived, and he subsequently went to UCLA, joined the Army, and went to Vietnam, and came back. And since that time has been, I think, leading, it's fair to say, leading the restoration and recapturing of the Chinatown community in Santa Cruz. Most of the Chinatown community is not there now, but he's trying to recapture the history of it. So with that, And then one of George's major thing, of course, was to have this published by Sandy Leiden, and as a result, many of us now know the history in this area. So it's a major contribution. 2 years ago, when Professor Leiden spoke at our event over at Chautauqua Hall, I happened to be sitting next to George, and I turned to him and said, "What's your name?" He said, "George." I said, "Where are you from?" "Santa Cruz." I said, "I'm Floydian, I'm from Upland." So I shook his hand at that point. I didn't know the significance of George at that time, so of course I do now especially. So with that, we want to honor George Al for his leadership in helping to get this book published, and for supporting Sandy, Professor Leiden through all these years of partnership. A true, like I said, they're bookends. The community side and the academic side. And together we've come to learn and appreciate the history of our communities here in Monterey Bay. So with that, Quok Mui Foundation would love to honor him with the second award. I think it's right here. Quok Mui Foundation for its contributions in advancing the history of the Chinese in California. George Al, Jr.
I am honored to be here, to be amongst so many of the descendants of Quok Mui and Spanish Mary and all the other characters that make our history rich. And of course, Sandy Leiden. Sandy Leiden, he produced Chinese gold, he wrote it, researched it, and that was a quenching of a burning thirst in my soul, because he told our story so well. And I thank everybody for being here. Floyd, thank you. Randy, keep up the good work. Thank you.
George and Parker, no practitioner like my daughter-in-law, same thing, and I'm sure they do a lot of the same work. So with the next speaker, it's especially close to my heart because I am one of the founders of Asian American Studies at UC Berkeley. 1969, when we went on strike, we shut down the campus for a whole quarter, and at the end of that, the academic senate at UC Berkeley voted 555 to 5. 555 to 5. To support our demands. So we call it End to the Strike. And thus was launched one of the first ethnic studies programs in the country. We know now that things may start at some point, but it takes a lot of work to make it realized. For example, last year, the California State Legislature finally required every graduate of California in the primary school to take ethnic studies. And that Cal State Los Angeles, their Board of Regents, is requiring ethnic studies courses to be considered a graduate of the Cal State system. Finally, after over 50 years of struggle, we're getting to that point now. So that every single child, every single student in California will learn our true history. With that, Sandy Leiden is a true pioneer. Working at Cabrillo College from the 1970s until very recently, I think he's retired now, as a professor of history and Asian American Studies. So literally he was the first Asian American Studies professor in the Monterey Bay area. Also the first junior college program. My daughter's trying to get a PhD in teaching junior college to follow your footsteps, and also in ethnic studies. So the fact that you were the first is quite remarkable. Sandy likes to say that he wrote the book because Him-Bok Lai and Phil Choi at the San Francisco History Museum pretty much asked him to, because they were covering the San Francisco area. He was going to cover the Monterey Bay area. And I think Chinese gold is a true work of love. And how did he get this information? He talked to people. He listened to people. Gee, what an amazing thing to do. So in 1985, he published China Gold. And in 1997, he also published a work about Japanese Americans to Monterey Bay. So he covers the waterfront with Asian American studies. One of his students, Jeff Tagami, ended up becoming a Filipino studies leader in his own community. So I think among his students, that's a testament of the impact that he had. In 2002, the Watsonville JCL, working with Sandy, did a reenactment of what happened during relocation. And I want to say that I'm very close to that because Asian American political lines are the first ones in 1969 to walk from Buddhist temple to Buddhist temple trying to get the Japanese community to address this problem by overturning the McCarran Act. Yuji Ichioka, who was the founder of our Asian American political lines, and I were thrown out one by one. And all the monks said, don't bring this out, it's too shameful. Of course, did we give up? Of course not. We're UC Berkeley radicals. And so we proceeded to talk to JCL, and all of you know that after a vigorous national campaign, President Bush finally apologized and issued $20,000 to every surviving internment victim. So that was quite a victory. I'm reading about what Sandy has done. They called it a natural history, revolutionary new holistic history paradigm. And he'll talk more about that. But I remember 2 years ago at Chautauqua Hall when Professor Leiden said, this is a beautiful area, probably the most beautiful area in California. So everybody appreciates it. The problem is that the history of the people has not been equally understood. So that was his goal, is to fill in the people's history, which of course is what we're all about. So I think that's what the revolutionary new holistic history paradigm is all about, is talking about the people, which is the main thing. We were at he talked about Point Lobos being really important for capturing that history, because that's where Quok Mui was born in 1859. They asked him in several interviews, how did you do this? He said, doing the work, paying respect for the stories of the people, always armed with photographs to show them. And he'll talk a bit about that a little later on. Like I said, there were bookends, and his book was published by George Al's company. And I was going to end the introduction to him by reading from page 503 of his book. I feel like a preacher here. Psalms 102, 502. It's basically the end. The Chinese called America the Golden Mountain, otherwise known as Gumsan. An image of the gold fueled their desire to immigrate to the United States, including my family. We came in '49. There is very little actual gold to mine in the Monterey Bay region, but that did not deter the Chinese, for they could see value where others could not. Today, we would call the process appropriate technology or recycling, and we would label them as ecologists. In the 19th century, they were dismissed as heathen Chinese, quote unquote. Perhaps the greatest contribution the Chinese made to the Monterey Bay region was the gift of vision. The ability to see the potential value in the most mundane creatures, crops, and discarded items, abalone, squid, sardines, etc. The Chinese worked the edges, taking fish heads, mustard, dry squid, sea urchins, cold apples, and willow swamps, and elevating them from the status of waste products to highly peripheral industries and profitable. More often than not, bemused white observers usually followed suit later and copied what the Chinese did, whether in squid drying, mustard harvest, or sardine reduction. Through their particular form of alchemy, that's Chinese gold, insight plus ingenuity plus energy, the Chinese turned what they found into gold to the lasting benefit of the Monterey Bay region in now California and the United States. With that, Professor Sandy Leiden, we wish to, Quok Mui Foundation is honored to award you this award for this year. Thank you.
leave the floor for the Did I say that?
You did say that. You wrote it.
Wow. And I apologize for wearing a hat. My eyesight, you know about these things. The glare is not good. Thank God there wasn't a spotlight. You know when they put a spotlight in the back of the room? Dead meat. So I worked for many years with a colleague, Tony and I, George and I did. His name was Tony Hill. Tony Hill was born and raised in Harlem, African American, and he came into the Santa Cruz County and tried to change things. And it was a wonderful experience. Though Tony's no longer with us, but he kind of is, you know what I'm saying? He's along with Sister Benita Francis. Sister Benita Francis is on one shoulder, and then Tony's on the other. And what Tony would say at this particular moment, he would say, look around. See who's not here. In any group that we would go to, he and I would do a shtick where we were working on affirmative action. Some of you may remember that, that's some time ago. But I'm now a retroactive affirmative action officer. That's what I do. I put people back in their history. We were trying to get colleges and universities a little more accepting to diversity in their ranks. And we called it From Harlem to Hollister, because obviously, but then we'd switch. Because they would expect Tony to maybe beat him up a little bit. I had that job. And so it was very confusing to audiences because, in fact, there were often times when they would be watching the other person when they weren't getting the right thing from the person they expected to, you know, it's like ventriloquism or something. At any rate, his phrase, look around and see who's here, is really, really powerful for me today. Because you want to see, look who's here. This is astonishing, I have to tell you. I had no idea who would come. I had no idea who would participate. We've been to the walk before, but one of the themes that I want to work on a little bit is the importance of allies. You can't do this alone. Whether it's a Chinese group, Japanese, Filipinos, Azorians, I don't care. If you want to make change, you can't do it, you need allies, and particularly now. Annie and I were going around the stores last week trying to find a copy of Time magazine. And we couldn't. It was sold out everywhere we went. I haven't read a Time magazine in 1,000 years. But this particular one was devoted to a particular politician whose name I will not mention, who laid out his plans. It included everything that I thought we'd already taken care of. It's the 60s all over again. It's talking about impossible, yet it's real. And what I think we do when we rummage around in the past, it's a lot of us spend most of our lives there. It's quieter, but it's also illuminating to see how things were, how people reacted. And for those of us who, I started doing this, I started teaching high school when I was 21 years old, graduate of UC Davis, on a provisional high school general secondary credential. Some of you may remember the general secondary. You know what the general secondary meant? You can teach anything. So if I wanted to teach biology, I could do that legally. I wouldn't try. But way back then, 1961, full-time high school teacher, baseball coach, and everything else the district could think of to have me do for my $4,682 a year. I'm a teacher. I didn't know it then. Interesting that this was not a role that I had thought of. I thought maybe my curveball was good enough, but they weren't paying enough in those years to make it worthwhile. So I was interested in China. It came to me sideways. It came to me via Chinese literature and philosophy. I went to Davis in between 57 and 62, and there were no Asian classes in the history department. There was nothing on Asia at all. So I was just reading on my own, and as I started to teach the high school classes, I started to see that there was, we could do some interesting things here. And we had a district that wasn't paying a lot of attention to what we were doing at the high school at that time. There was 3 John Birch Society chapters in our district. And this was in Sacramento County. I won't mention the name, but in the process of doing that, I got very interested in Asia. Eventually got a scholarship at the East-West Center. And this is in a time when you couldn't go to China. And, no one knew that Richard Nixon was going to do what he did on a number of levels. They didn't know what he was going to do. Richard Nixon is an interesting example for me. And I was introduced to him and his nuances, believe it or not, standing in Tiananmen Square. I had a group in China. We always went to Tiananmen Square. It's the center of the world, of the Middle Kingdom. I mean, how could you not, right? And it's a wonderful place because many Chinese people practice their English there. And so you can always get in a good conversation. And I was in one, and it was a middle-aged man. And I asked him, I said, that's Mao Zedong up there on the wall. Why is he still up there? I mean, didn't he do a lot of things that were kind of harmful to the Chinese people? And the guy, this was one of the wonderful philosophical moments of my life, because he looked at me and he said, well, that's true. The Great Leap Forward, Cultural Revolution, some of those were harmful and a lot of people died, but he liberated the country. He made us free from foreign influence and domination. China stood up, he said, which was what actually Mao had said when he was on the gate. And he said, so we Chinese people figure 80% bad, 20% good. He can stay up there. And then he looked at me and he said, what do you think about Richard Nixon? And he knew, see, that's the part of that is, he knew that there was something, there was an issue there that involved China. And I looked at him and I was nailed, just nailed. And I said, well, that's right, he was a criminal. But in 1972, he began the relations between the United States and China, which at that time seemed hopeless. And honestly, I would not have been standing there probably to have that conversation if he had not done what he did in 1972. So I said, taking the lead on the proportion, I said, 80%, I give him 80-20. I'd say most of it, particularly the stuff in the White House and the burglars and all that stuff, that's the 80%. But he did do at least one thing that I know of that was very important and will stand in history. So the reason I bring this up is that we're in a place now, I believe, where history is under assault in many ways. But the important, I think, perspective is that it's not all black and white. It's not all good, bad. We're in a place where it's got to be polarized. And I think that's extremely unfortunate. And I think it's this group's committee that is going to need to be alert enough to understand that history has nuances. Humans have nuances. And you need to do good, hard, historical research and tell it as it happened. Not just because there's a way that you wish that it happened. I think COVID, in some ways, killed history because it drove people doing research to the internet. Libraries closed. Everything closed down. You couldn't go and you couldn't leave your house. So you went to the internet to look up your history. The internet is a large restroom wall. There may be something worth knowing on there, but you need to sort through the rest of it. And it's not worth your time. And you won't be able to judge because there's no jury, there's no review, nobody's taking a look at it. So here's the deal. Gerry Low-Sabado and I met early on in both of our lives, it seems like. And I was at a place, one story, right? Yeah. Maybe three, but one for sure. So I'm prowling around this property somewhere 1970 something, and I've been researching the story of the Chinese, and I knew about the village, and I was looking for Monkey Face Rock actually, which was one of my favorite geological formations, which was over there. And Monkey Face Rock was the rock that they had built the building around. It showed up in all the photographs, and I was looking for the rock, and then I looked over there and I noticed there was something being built, some construction, going not far to the east. And I found out that they were going to build an aquarium. And they had a kind of an office set up. And so I walked through the door, and I said, and a nice gentleman who became very good friends, Steve Webster, one of the founders of the apocryphal founding of the aquarium, and I said, what are you guys going to be doing about fishermen? And he looked like I'd hit him with a board. Honest to God, he looked almost startled, dumbfounded, and he said, well, not. And so I got him off the hook, and I said, well, for example, right outside your door, right here, I said there was a huge Chinese fishing village. You gonna be doing anything about fishermen? And he said, "What? Why don't you prepare something? Why don't you write something for us? Right? We don't know much about fishermen, so I put together pro bono. I don't know, a large volume, summarizing all of the various indigenous and immigrant groups that had used this region for fishing, and what the years and where they were and everything. I tried to find a copy on my shelf the other day. I couldn't find it. But so we started to work, and I was working with Tim Thomas at the time, and Tim and I began to make presentations to as the buildings got, began to come about, right? And finally there was a meeting, and it was showdown time, apparently. Whether people were going to have any incursionist thing or was just going to be fish, right? And in the meeting, it was made very clear that they were not interested in the fishermen. They gave us the felucca. If you remember, when you walked through the front door, hanging on the second floor off the balcony was a beautiful felucca, but that was it. They gave us and that's technology. That's not, that's kind of fisherman, but there's no meat, no bones, no human. So I started to work. And I wormed my way into helping with the docent training. There were 10 of us, I believe, and it was a 10-month program. They really made this hard work for people who want to be a docent in the aquarium. And I was the one unnatural historian, all marine scientists, except me. So I figured, okay, the headquarters isn't going to listen. Maybe I can get it in this way. And for 10 years, I was involved in the docent training, and then we had a falling out. It was a little sense of humor issue, and it was at the 10th anniversary. And so I gave up. I even got to the point of, look, you got a window facing where the village was. Why don't you just put a photograph of the village right next to the window, and then people can see it. No ice. Along she comes. And we then began, because she was interested in the book, and she was interested in Quok Mui, and George and I had gone to a reunion of the Quok family up in Los Gatos. So there was an interest in, that she was going to pick it up. She was going to pick up the baton. And I was grateful, because I pretty much gave it up. I wasn't going to have it. I wasn't going to succeed in that. So she began to work on them. And in her gentle but forceful way, she did what I could not do. And I would never be able to do, actually. Because she was a descendant. She had documentation. She had credentials that I didn't have. But more importantly, she had more patience than I did. And she was like water. She would wear people down, just slowly, but work them. And those of you that have experienced it, I many times, was a great admirer of it, because that's not my style. And, a little bit of Irish and too much Hollister, and I don't have time for this stuff. So, I think the greatest victory for me was in 2015, the aquarium began to do a show out on the deck where the tide pool is, where they have a place where you can actually look out over the ocean, and there's a tide pool there. And it was a demonstration of fishing And it had two major components to it, and one, actually three. First were the indigenous people, and that was Linda Yamane. She did that work for them and got them, she got them a tule balsa and got that all squared away. And then Gerry did the Chinese, and they had a sampan that they had created, and they had a couple people who sculled it, and they had a little lantern, you know, to symbolize the fires that they used to attract the fish. And then they did a thing on the abalone and the Japanese. And it was startling to see it. We'd come from nothing, but only Gerry could have pulled it off. And of course, COVID killed us there too. They stopped doing the show. I've been trying to find out is there anybody here from the aquarium that would know? Are they planning this summer to do it?
I asked about it, they said during the summer.
It'd be really, really, really nice. What time we got here? Is that American time or whose time is it? Okay, got it. Well, just to show people what you're doing. You can never trust that where you're working has got a clock in it. So I've deducted this from my income tax about 25 times. So they don't know. Don't treat them like they know, all right? Okay, so here's the deal. Give me my friend here. You're going to have to hold this for a second. You hold this. So, what we're looking for, you can hold that. So, yeah, too many hands. I gotta make sure that the eyeballs are out.
Oh, cool.
You got the eyeball? Yeah, there you go. There you go. Let me have that. All right. So, if you are able to go through life and never be excited about a squid, that's too bad. You know? That's just too bad. So, the squid story, what was mentioned during the intro was, the thing that Chinese brought was vision, and the vision was often by necessity. Because when they found something useful that they knew how to do, and they could make money at it, the other communities would move in on them in a flash and drive them off. So they had to know everything. But they're from China, they do know everything. They know what's edible and there isn't anything that's not. George's father told him stories that they would suck on a pebble during famines. They know. And so, when the pushing and shoving and the railroad came, and then eventually the rockfish, because Monterey is too far away for a fish to be any good by the time it gets to where it's going, right? Fresh is not a word. Fresh fish was not a word usually used, and sometimes it's not even now. So the one thing that the Chinese fishermen knew how to do was preserve things so that they could be shipped. And they got shoved around to the point where they got shoved to the squid. If you do it alphabetically, boy, they worked a long way through. They started with the abalone, and then they went down all the list. So they got, and what they knew was squid have very, very small brains, very small, and they're attracted to the light. And this particular fishing system can only be used on moonless nights, because if you give them two choices, see, if they've got the moon and they've got the little light that you're going to show them to try to attract them up, they go crazy and their brains explode. And by the way, if you're a marine biologist, you don't belong here anyway. Not when I'm doing this. So they began to develop the squid industry. And the squid industry became their lifeline. Now, the industry brought a couple of interesting things. One is an odor. In fact, when I was interviewing Margaret Lamb, who was the last squid dryer over in Seaside, and actually did it, she showed me, she had some. She said, I said, well, what's the difference between a dried squid and a spoiled squid? And she said, not very much. Great lady, Margaret Lamb. But this climate is perfect. You can't dry your laundry here. Why should you be able to get anything else dry, right? This is a great moist climate, perfect. By the way, did you notice that the sunny side of the bay this morning wasn't? Yeah, for those of you who were over here, you had the sun. Santa Cruz didn't have it. So they would dry them, process them, dry them, clean them, dry them, and then ship them. See, right now, dried squid. That gets everybody excited. Right? So the market for dried squid in Hollister, I can tell you, was small, right? I mean, okay, but there were places in the world where it was large, and one of those places was China. And so they began to ship the dried squid to China. This was an international economy. We're at work. Do you know what the largest catch is off the California coast right now? Squid. By a lot. Huge amounts of squid going out of here every year. Thousands of tons from the west coast of North America. Being shipped to China. Flash frozen, shipped to China and Japan and Southeast Asia. It is a huge, huge market. And it's a tradition the Chinese invented in here. It's one of those things where if you see connections, what we want you to do, what I want you to do, the history is important. And the museums are important, and the exhibits are important. But you need to understand the little connections. I see a squid hanging on a place, actually, we got this in Japan. I got excited. And there was a gentleman with me who had more money than I did. And because I told the young man that had the stand, it was a display for he had a squid stand, right? And I wanted to buy his signs. Hi. What's your name? Sure, whatever. This is my floor director, driver now. I'm forever consigned to the right seat. The Department of Motor Vehicles will not let me get in the left seat. Well, I can, it's stationary. But that just makes me sad. Oh, yeah. Forever a passenger. Remember how hard you waited to get your driver's license when you were a kid? They don't tell you about the other end of the story. Yeah, there you go. So anyway, it was hanging there, and we started to negotiate, and eventually, for an amount of money, I have no idea, because the guy wouldn't tell me what he paid for it. And this is much larger than the squid that we're talking about that are off the coast. But that understanding of the pioneering things, I see a field of mustard, and I smile. Because Jim Jack, the mustard king, whose Chinese name we never learned, and we still haven't. I'm still working on it. But who turned considered, I agree with you, who turned the mustard into a cash crop. They thought it was weeds. Chinese people see things out of necessity because they come from a place where they've learned to see anything of value. Any street corner, anything that you could make it work. That's how they expanded the horizons of America. Chinese gold is taking things that have no apparent value and turning them into something valuable. Little gold nuggets all over this place. It's just that we haven't yet learned how to see them. And one of the things that I want to suggest to you who are in the business here is that if you are, okay, we who are outside of the Chinese community, he's not Chinese? No, he's not. We who are outside of the Chinese community have a disadvantage. We have advantages. We can say things that you can't. We can talk about you in ways that you can't talk about yourself. We can brag about you, and many of you are loath to brag. We are important for you, but the one thing we can't get figured out is who's related to who. What's their name? I met people in the historical record who had 5 different names within a week after being arrested for one thing or another and then giving them another name. Part of the way the Chinese were able to negotiate this hostile place was to stay just a little undercover and go around incognito if they could. All right? You can get through that. Now, I'm not saying you're going to blow everybody's cover that's got paper grandfathers and got, a lot of... You're not going to get deported. It's, it's too late for that. But to understand that the Chinese were hiding from me, and it was 100 years before. I'm not going to find anybody. So what I ended up with was 2 dimensions. 2-dimensionals, like cardboard cutouts. There were people, they had numbers, they were in the census, they were here and there, but I didn't know their names. And who was related to who, how the villages worked, all that stuff I didn't know. That's what you can do. And that's where we got some of the best stuff we ever got for the personality and the sight, sound, smell of the history that you can't get from the official records. You will probably hear this story often. You may hear it tomorrow out of Point Lobos. But there's a woman, the foundation is named for her, Quok Mui. And we had a photograph up on the wall. Rod Jones had it up here earlier. You were out walking. Well, I didn't want to get all worn out, so I couldn't talk to you. So the picture we put on the wall was Spanish Mary Quok Mui, but we had the wrong name was on the photograph. One day, as the spirits saw to it that happened, a woman named Mary Lee came into the cabin at Point Lobos and said, "That's the wrong name. That's my grandmother. Her name is Quok Mui." Or to me, she was grandma. I was in her living room within a week as she told me about Quok Mui things that I could never, ever know. Only people who knew her. The photograph itself that we saw was a photograph that Mary herself had taken. And she said, "You notice how low angle it is?" She said, she was a young teenager when she took the photograph. Your job, all of you who are descendants, and even those of you who are not, who are working in these fields, or in the group that you belong to, for whom your ancestors, it is critical. It is critical that you help the people outside the community know and learn about your ancestors. And then you need to do what's happened in this room. You need to welcome in the people who are not. Make them feel comfortable. Make them not feel like an outsider. And then when you go back in the history, the focus is often on the racism, and it's often on the discrimination. I came to this during the anti-Chinese movement in the Hawaiian Kingdom. You talk about a place that wasn't excited about me talking about that? The paradise of the Pacific? Oh my God. And I realized ultimately that wasn't about the people, it wasn't about the Chinese, it was about the racists. We need to fight through the desire to look at the automobile accident 14 times and see if we can find behavior that you want. Celebrate the people who did the good things. Honor them. Bring them out. We were talking about the reenactment. Mas Hashimoto and I, when we designed the reenactment, we thought, oh no, we're gonna have to talk about camp again, because that's what we do a lot, all right? So we said, why don't let's find the people who stood up at the time, not later, because everybody stands up later. They say, oh no, I wasn't, I had nothing to do with that. Yeah, right, okay. You go find them and you honor them. Model the behavior that you're trying, because we're all doing this for one reason. Besides doing the historical part, we're doing it to be sure that if it might come, again, you know how to see it and you know how to stand up and say something. That's your charge. It should never happen again. You know, Yogi Berra said it ain't over till it's over, but I changed that. It ain't over ever. It ain't over ever. You're gonna have to do it over and over again. Be proud, stand tall. Thank you.
That kind of concludes today. I hope you all enjoyed today. We had a great time in putting this together, believe it or not. We actually started planning this thing, I don't know, last year sometime, and we're going to start doing it again. So thank you again for coming. We hope to see you next year, and what am I going to say? Keep the faith.
If you want to join us so that you're part of us next year, let us know. We'll put you on the next thing to help us evaluate this weekend and also to plan next year. Thank you.
Thank you.